You wake up when your body is ready. No sound tears through that silence. No stream of notifications reminds you of what you haven't done. No pressure weighs on your chest the moment your eyes open. You simply lie there, feeling the lingering warmth from the ashes of last night, and let the only question of the morning emerge naturally. What will I do today? For 99% of human history, that is how every morning began. For about 300,000 years, billions of humans woke up with that same question. And they had no answer, they just had a day. I want you to pause for a second and think about the word work. How many hours have you worked in your life? An average city dweller spends about 90,000 hours on work. 1/3 of your waking life, 1/3 of your life spent doing things you don't necessarily want to do, to earn money to buy things to keep existing. That is a horrifying number. But sit down, because the next number is even worse. How many hours per week did your hunter-gatherer ancestors work? 15 hours, 20 hours, not 40, not 60, 15 to 20 hours, all week. In a classic 1960s study, anthropologist Richard Lee observed the Kungsen people in Botswana. They survived by hunting and gathering, and they spent about 17 hours a week obtaining food. What did they do with the rest of the time? They sat, they talked, they laughed, they made jewelry, they played with their children. They simply lived. And this was not an exception. It appeared everywhere researchers looked. The Hadza in Tanzania, 15 hours. The Ashe in Paraguay, 18 hours. The Martu in Australia, 20 hours. That wasn't laziness. That was the human design before we were caught in the trap of productivity. But you are thinking, that's modern people, ancient people. Fair enough. So let's look at their bones. When archaeologists compared the skeletons of hunter-gatherers from the Paleolithic era to those of the first farmers, the difference made them shudder. The hunter-gatherers were taller, had denser bones, and healthier teeth. They showed fewer signs of malnutrition. They had fewer joint injuries. Meanwhile, the first farmers were shorter, their teeth full of cavities, their spines arthritic from bending over to plow all day, and they died younger. Bones don't lie. They labored more, ate worse, and died younger. But they had more children, and more children meant they couldn't turn back. And so the trap shut tight. I want you to feel the loss here beyond just the data. Imagine a man. I will call him Tarik. Tarik lived 40,000 years ago, in a valley that is now France. He was a hunter. But one day, instead of hunting, Tarik went deep into a cave. He brought a torch, a lump of clay, and a piece of burnt charcoal. He sat down and began to draw. He drew a galloping horse, not like a child, but with an understanding of perspective and motion. He spent hours, perhaps days, on that painting, and when he was finished, he didn't need anyone to praise him. He didn't post it anywhere. He simply looked at his creation and felt, alive. That painting is still in the Chauvet Cave today, 30,000 years later. And I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time you spent hours on something you loved, without needing it to be useful, without needing it to make money, without needing anyone to know about it? At Blombos Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found intricately perforated shell beads, dating back 100,000 years, tiny holes drilled with stone through seashells. Someone walked 40 kilometers to get those shells. 20 kilometers there, 20 kilometers back. Upon returning, she sat down, carefully drilled each tiny hole and strung them together. She did it just to be more beautiful. No boss told her to do it, no bonus, no likes. She just wanted to create something beautiful, and I bet she was beautiful indeed. Then there is the 40,000-year-old flute carved from a vulture bone in Germany. 5 finger holes, perfectly spaced. The creator understood pitch and musical theory. They spent time creating something that didn't help them hunt, didn't help them fight, didn't help them eat. It helped them play music, because as I said, they had the time. Now, let's spend a morning with them. You wake up just as the sun peaks over the horizon. The fire from last night still has glowing embers. A woman in the tribe, perhaps your mother, adds wood, and the fire bursts into flames. You eat leftover meat from a hunt 2 days ago. No coffee, no toast, just meat and a few dried berries. Everyone sits around the fire, they talk, not meetings. Not reports, they just talk. Someone tells a joke, everyone laughs. Someone complains about someone else taking too much food. Everyone gossips. They talk about last night's dreams. Someone says they dreamed of a giant deer with snow-white fur, and someone else says it's an omen of a lucky hunt to come. A woman says she dreamed of the rising river, and everyone discusses whether it's a sign that the rainy season is approaching. These conversations have no practical purpose. They don't help them get more food or live longer, but they create connection. They create understanding, they create a community, and in their world, community is the only insurance they have. That isn't a meeting. That is a life. Around midday, some people leave the camp, a hunting party, a gathering group, but the important thing is you don't go every day. If there is still meat, if the berries are sufficient, you stay. You might spend the morning sharpening a spear, weaving a basket, or sitting under the shade of a tree and doing nothing. I emphasize, doing nothing. That doesn't mean you are lazy. It means you understand that existing is enough, and the hunt, when it happens, is nothing like the movies. It's not a frantic chase with spears and bows. Humans are persistence hunters. We run slowly, but we run for a long time. We sweat while other animals cannot. We follow a deer or an antelope for hours at a steady pace until it overheats and collapses. That isn't power, that is patience, that is intelligence. And when the animal falls, everyone in the camp eats. No one keeps it for themselves. No one hoards. Because in a world without refrigerators, leftover meat is just rotting meat. Around 3 in the afternoon, the productive part of the day is over. And now is the time that modern people find the hardest to understand. Everyone rests. They sit in the shade, talk, and play with the children. They groom each other for lice, a hygienic activity but also a ritual of social bonding. They make jewelry. They carve patterns into bone. They take a nap. There is no regret, no guilt for wasting time, because in their world, time is not money. Time is time. Anthropologist James Sussman spent many years living with the Chauvet people. He noticed they spent about 6 hours every day in what he called social time. They just stayed together. No purpose, no output, just presence. And Sussman realized something. In a world without money, without contracts, without police, your survival depends entirely on your relationships. If someone doesn't like you, they might not share food when you are hungry. So you invest in relationships, not because it is efficient, but because it is how humans remain humans. When the sun sets, a miracle happens. The fire is lit. Everyone sits around. And the conversations change. A researcher named Polly Wiesner recorded hundreds of hours of Chauvet conversation. During the day, they talk about practical things. Who saw deer tracks where? Which trees have ripe fruit? Someone took more meat than necessary. But when night falls and the fire burns bright, 81% of the conversations shift to storytelling. Tales about spirits, about ancestors, about adventures in faraway lands, jokes that make everyone's stomach ache with laughter. Wiesner realized that it was here, around the fire, that human culture was born. Because only when your belly is full and you are safe can you think about the divine, about the past, about the future. Only then do you become human, and they didn't sleep like you do. Before electric lights, humans slept in 2 phases. Sleep the first 4 hours, wake up around 2 a.m., lie in the darkness for an hour or 2, and sleep for another 4 hours. They didn't call that insomnia. They called it time to dream, to reflect, to make love, to tell whispered stories. They had time, and they used it to become human. What changed? Agriculture. About 10,000 years ago, a group of people in the Fertile Crescent decided to sow seeds. It was a small decision on a single day, but it changed everything. Because once you farm, you can have more children. More children means you need more food. More food means you must farm more, and you cannot stop. You can no longer ask, what will I do today? You must work. If not, your children will die. The trap has shut tight. Imagine you have spent your entire life living to the rhythm of nature, waking when it is light, resting when it is hot, sleeping when it is dark, and suddenly, you must live to the rhythm of a field. Seeds do not wait. They must be sown at the right time, watered at the right time, harvested at the right time. If you are 1 day late, you might lose the whole season. If you are a week late, you might starve. And once you have started, you cannot stop. You cannot wonder, what do I want to do today? You can only ask, what must I do today? And that quietly is the end of something that existed for 300,000 years. The idea that your day belongs to you, that you can choose, that life is not a to-do list to be completed. The first farmers worked harder than any ancestors before them. They plowed, they planted, they weeded, they harvested, they protected the crops from pests and animals and raiders. And their bones tell that story. They were shorter, weaker, more prone to disease. They had less freedom, less time, less happiness, but they had more children. And with more children came more people. And with more people came the division of labor. And with the division of labor came specialists, toolmakers, potters, weavers. Then soldiers, priests, administrators, and finally something humanity had never seen before, jobs. The idea that your time belongs to someone else in exchange for resources. And that is how we have lived for the past 6,000 years. That is 6% of human history. For only 6% of the time have we lived with jobs, schedules, bosses, and the pressure to succeed. For the other 94%, we lived in freedom. I want you to pause for a moment. Think about that. You are living in that 6% of human history. You are working 1/3 of your life to have things your ancestors never needed. You sleep once a day and call waking up at 2 in the morning an illness. They slept twice and used the time between the night to reflect. You create art if you can find the time after work. They created art because they had the time. You spend your life chasing an illusion of greatness that society invented. They woke up every morning and were already enough. Nothing to prove, nothing to achieve, just another day to live. And that is where this story becomes truly important to you. Because this is not just about the past. This is about right now. You sit here after a long day or a long week, feeling tired, feeling empty, wondering why you are still not enough. And I am telling you that feeling is not your fault. It is the fault of a system built to make you feel that way. A system built to make you think that your worth is the number of hours you work, the amount of money you make, the number of achievements you rack up. But your ancestors did not have those things, and they were fine. They lived, loved, laughed, created. They made things that still amaze us tens of thousands of years later. They told stories that still touch our souls, and they did all of that without a schedule, a boss, or a career ladder. I am not saying you should quit your job and live in a cave. I'm not saying civilization is bad. But I am saying you have a choice. In every day, there are gaps. Between meetings, between answering messages, between the moments you are running non-stop. Those gaps are yours, and you can fill them with the things your ancestors did. You can create something just because it is beautiful. You can call a friend and tell a story. You can sit and do nothing. No guilt, no apologies. Because when you do that, you are connecting to a flow that is 300,000 years long. A flow of people who understood something that we have forgotten. They understood that life is not something to be managed. It is something to be lived. They understood that you do not need to be important to have value. They understood that just existing is enough. I want you to take this home tonight. How many years have you spent chasing something? How many years trying to prove you are worthy? How many years worrying about the future, about jobs, about money, about what others think? And I ask you, did your ancestors ever do that? Did they worry about the future? Maybe a little when winter came. But did they spend their entire lives chasing an illusion? No, they lived, they were there, they were truly present, and perhaps that is the greatest gift they left us. Not a skill, not a technology, but a reminder that you can stop, you can sit down, you can look at the fire, you can listen to the story, and you will still be okay. You will still be a human being. That is what your ancestors did for 300,000 years. And that is what you can do right now. No need to leave everything behind, no need to abandon modernity. Just remember, for a moment, every day. So tonight, turn off your phone, sit in the dark for a while, listen to your breath, and ask yourself, how much of today did I actually live? The answer might make you sad, but it might also be the beginning of something new, a different way of existing, not the way of the 6%, but the way of the 100%, the human way. And that, I think, is why you have watched to the end of this video. Not because you wanted to learn about the past, but because you wanted to understand yourself. And now you have that. You have understood that you are not broken. You are just living in a trap you did not create, and you can begin to see the exit. Not a big exit, just a small hole, a gap, a moment where you simply exist, and that is already enough. But I want to say one last thing before you turn off this video. When I say your ancestors lived in freedom, I'm not saying their lives were easy. They endured freezing winters, hunger, wounds without medicine, and the deaths of those they loved without a chance to say goodbye. They did not live in a world without suffering. They lived in a world where suffering had meaning. It was not an injustice. It was part of life. They did not run from it. They did not try to erase it. They did not spend their lives fearing it. They accepted it, and by doing so, they escaped a pain we carry, the pain of not accepting what cannot be changed. Perhaps that is what we can learn from them. Not how to live like them, but how to look at life like them. To look at a rainy day and not try to rearrange it. To look at an empty evening and not try to fill it. To look at yourself and not try to be different. That is not giving up. That is freedom. Everything you have just heard is based on real scientific research regarding the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, including the works of Richard Lee, Polly Wiesner, and James Sussman. The storytelling and perspective in this video are completely original, but the facts about the bones, about the caves, about how our ancestors lived, those are real. And now you know, you understand, and you can start to live differently.